Good morning, Hubert Johnson here with Taxes Made Easy. Thank you for watching here on the smartmoneychannel.com. Um, we've got a lot of news to cover today, but we're really going to continue the conversation from yesterday. We talked about the taxpayer advocate and how they can really help resolve cases, thorny cases. But when really you need help in the moment, immediate help, the IRS has issued wage garnishments, bank levies, and you need immediate help. Taxpayer advocate takes way too long to get on a case to help out. They're much better for larger, thornier issues that take a long time to resolve. So how do you get immediate help? And there are ways to get immediate appeals that will buy you some time, give you some breathing room, but it's very important how you use those times. So that's what our topic is going to be for today. Stay with us and we'll be right back after this break. Welcome back, everybody, and thank you for watching. We have a lot of news lined up for today. We're just going to dive right in with some economic news. We've got a lot of economic news pending today. The biggest news out there that's going to come out later today is about whether or not the Fed's going to cut rates or not. So that's something that's on everybody's mind. But again, we don't know yet, so I'm not going to sit here and pontificate and guess as to what they're going to do. We'll find out today. But it's going to have a lot of effect through the market. So this is something I've mentioned before, and this is another article from Epic Times talking about how remote work is actually hurting downtown areas, it's hurting commercial properties, and it's going to trickle down through the economy. So again, you have this commercial real estate throughout the country, especially in some of the biggest cities. They're empty. So compared to pre-pandemic, they're only 49.3% utilized. So that's a 50% drop when you compare it to the pre-COVID area. So when you look at swipes, and how many people actually go into the office, it looks like 49.3%. However, vacancy rates, which means nobody's in the office, it's empty space in a building that nobody's using, is at an all-time high of 20.1% this summer. And so that needs to be addressed as well. But the key with that is that vacancy rates really tend to lag behind occupancy. And the reason for that is because most people pay their leases until they get out of their, until the lease is done. So they don't take a credit hit when that happens. So office utilization measures tell how often people are going in and using it. But when you have people not going to the office, not going downtown, it affects all kinds of things. First of all, there's less travel, which is a good thing, but it means that downtown areas are less utilized. Foot traffic, all the businesses that depend on people going downtown are getting hurt as well. And that's not something this article really talks about, but downtowns are undergoing a sharp decline as they're no longer commuting. And that's just based on smartphone records. So again, it's only about 76% of their pre-pandemic foot traffic on average. So, and this is really hurting and going to hurt landlords, commercial property owners. When market rents go down, lease renewal rates go down, it's just a trickle effect. Yes, they're probably more wealthy, but when you hurt people like that, it affects the city at large. So New York, NYU, and Columbia University predicted that New York City office values could plunge by 49% by 2029. So that's 5 years from now, but they're seeing this trend where the office values are plunging, and that could really hurt tax base. So again, just kind of lead to this urban doom loop where it can hurt cities really bad. It can hurt people living in the cities really bad. And again, that affects minorities to a greater degree. So this is, while it's kind of arcane and who cares about commercial property, it hurts. Anytime one sector of the economy is hurting, it usually has ripple effects and can have a lot of issues throughout the economy and cause a lot of problems. So again, they're trying to convert and push converting office space into dwelling places or something like that. But again, the way they're built, many times they're just not designed for that. They don't have the infrastructure, for kitchens, for bathrooms, to turn it into condos, whatever. While some of that does exist, it can be a problem for cities, because if there's not jobs in the cities, why would people want to live in the city as well? So something for concern. Jumping to the next article, this is going to be quick. We've been talking a lot about Boeing woes. Again, it's not a good thing, and their stock is down to a year low. On the news, if you look at Boeing stock, it's down about 30%, and this is due to the strike. A lot of people are, their credit ratings might go down if they don't resolve the strike quickly. So again, there's a lot of incentive for Boeing to get this resolved quickly. And the concern is getting this done in a way that doesn't hurt their recovery, because you have a new CEO, he has new plans, trying to turn this great American company around. But again, you have the concerns of the workers and union members as well. So they really do have Boeing over a barrel right now. And let's see what happens as far as moving forward. And then again, they have had their benefits cut. So this, I think, is a good article. Like EVs or hate them, I don't think there's a doubt that they will have a place on our roads. I know a lot of car companies now are pushing for hybrids more and more. But I don't have a problem with providing a tax credit for private individuals to build EV chargers. There's a lack of them. That's one of the big reasons why people aren't doing it, is because it's costly. They're not widely used. So you have a chicken and egg problem. I think it's a much better use of taxpayer funds than the Biden administration going out and actively funding the creation, which we got 7 for like over $1 billion. Just it was some ridiculous numbers like that. I don't even remember off the top of my head. But they're expanding this to make it easier for people to take credit for this. So 30% off the installing of a charger, and this is not just per location. It's they just widened this so it's up to $1,000 per charging port that they can get on this credit. So hopefully this helps expand and chargers into rural America, and areas that are less served, and those are the areas where people aren't buying EVs because there's no chargers. And there's other reasons why people aren't buying EVs, but I think if this is a program we want to push, I don't have a problem with them doing it using market incentives. I just don't like them throwing tons of money at companies that turn around and fail. Cost of living increase. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this because it affects so many people with this, living on Social Security. And this is from the Motley Fool Financials website. The forecast for 2025 was updated, and it's bad news. Why is it bad news? Because the official inflation numbers are down. They're based on the CPI, which the government excludes most of the things that are more volatile. Some of the biggest increases are in housing and again, it's been fairly large increases over the last few years because inflation has been out of control. But the problem is official numbers are always have, you know, especially over the last 4 years, have been much lower than actual inflation. So even though that they've got, they've gotten pretty sizable increases. So for 2022 it was 5.9%, and then 8.7% in 23, went down to 3.2% in 24, and then it's anticipated it's going to go down to 2.5%. Despite all those raises, they're saying that purchasing power has declined by 20% since 2010. So they're going further back, but the biggest inflation has been in just the last 4 years. So their purchasing power is going down, even though they're getting cost of living increases. It's just this is a big thing that affects people relying on Social Security. It's going to have less purchasing power. It's going to be less valuable to rely on Social Security as inflation continues, and it's always going to continue at some amount. But with the government manipulating the numbers and having much lower official numbers, that carries over to what people actually get. So when the official number is much lower than actual inflation, you're really cutting into purchasing power of seniors and making their Social Security worth less and less over time. And this is going to impact people when you do retire in 20, 30 years. Social Security, the amount that they give you is going to be it's going to be worth a lot less compared to actual cost of goods. So if you cannot rely on Social Security to retire. If you do, you're setting yourself up for poverty. And with time, it's going to be more and more extreme poverty. The people that I see that are succeeding and thriving have multiple sources, Social Security just being one of them, to rely on in retirement. So again, a lot more retired workers are dealing with financial hardship. Less than 50% think they have enough money to live comfortably on, and 90% are worried about inflation reducing the value because it's happening. If you have money in savings, just in savings, you're losing money. I talked to someone yesterday, they had money in a 5% money market account. Based on real inflation numbers, they're losing value on that. So what the true inflation numbers are right now, it's very nebulous. It's hard to tell because the government's not tracking. And it's been decades since we've had true inflation numbers. But especially with the huge rise in inflation recently, it's caused a lot of pain and it's hurting people, especially the elderly, more than anybody else. So the 2.5% raise is the smallest raise since 2021, and it kind of goes into the details of that. I'm not going to dive too much into it. Here's the headline. This is what really matters. It's going to lose, even though they're getting a raise, they're losing buying power. If you're concerned about how to retire and get more on Social Security, talk to a Social Security expert. But we're going to break and come right back after this break. Welcome back, everybody. And we're going to stick with this idea of workers' incomes not keeping up. We talked about Social Security. Here's another article, this time from Fox News, about American wages are still losing the inflation race. And unfortunately, that's what typically happens. There are times that wages can, in a very robust economy, catch up, but that's not what we're in right now. So they're saying that U.S. prices have risen at least 20%. When you look at real inflation, it's much higher than that. When you look at the cost of housing, the cost of vehicles, there's many, many ways where that hasn't, and inflation is not done. It's still raging in insurance right now. And they're saying wages have only risen 17.4% since 2021. So again, it's been a problem across the board. While inflation has gone down from its post-pandemic highs, real wages haven't kept up. and that's something I think most people see in their pocketbook, they experience. And so you've had 16 months of real wage growth, and it hasn't been enough to offset 25 months when prices rose disproportionately quicker than wages, and inflation's not done. So today they're on, mentions the Fed Reserve. It's almost guaranteed to cut rates today. The question is how much. They'll probably be cautious and just drop up by 1/4%. It might be 0.5%, I don't know. But it's going to be a while before wages catch up with inflation. But if the job market and economy nosedives, it could put any recovery at serious jeopardy based on what's happening with the labor market, with manufacturing is still down. There's a lot of concerns throughout that. And so again, they're basing these numbers based off the CPI, just like the cost of living increase for seniors that we talked about in the previous article. So these two articles really do go hand in hand. Not only does it affect seniors, it's affecting average people. However, seniors, when their cost of living increases don't keep up with inflation, their only alternative is to either go out and get a job or go find other sources of funding, and it's really hard to build those assets once you retire. So that's why it's so important to plan early, and plan to avoid inflation. So again, it's nothing that should surprise anybody, but it is one of the things out there that's affecting individuals, affecting wages right now, and inflation is still causing a lot of problems. Now, here's a big issue. It's in the news. I haven't really talked about it yet because right now we don't know what's going on. But we're kind of coming up to the next deadline to pass a continuing resolution or continue to kick the can down the road. We've been doing continuing resolutions. We don't have a real budget in place because we have a divided Congress. You have the Republicans controlling the House, Democrats controlling the Senate, and with Joe Biden in office as the president, again, there's a lot of gridlock and very little incentive to negotiate, especially in an election year. So, House Speaker Mike Johnson is trying to thread the needle, and he wants to do a temporary government funding proposal, but that also includes an election security bill called the SAVE Act. So, and they're saying he'll temporarily fund the government, and this needs to happen by September 30th, so 12 days away. They left to wait until the last minute. And it seeks to strengthen prohibitions on foreign nationals from voting. A lot of people, Democrats, argue that it's not needed. However, there's more and more cases coming out and evidences of people that have voted, people being charged, etc. How serious of an issue of it is really depends on which party you subscribe to, and whether or not you trust our elections. So Democrats have been strongly opposed to the bill. Even if it passes the House, it might not get through the Senate. But you also have some Republicans opposing the stopgap bill because it doesn't have any spending cuts. So because of their opposition, he canceled the vote on September 11th. And today he's supposed to have a vote on it, the continuing resolution with the SAVE Act, and just have a vote for it. And again, citing the need to secure elections. Let's see what happens in the House. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens, not only in the House, but in the Senate. And again, we need, every 6 months, it's a mess. We just keep passing the same bill, spending the same amount of money. I'd love to see some spending cuts. And so there's a lot of going back and forth here. Let's see what happens. There should be a vote on it and more news on that today. So I've got a couple more issues before we get into our articles, before we get into our main topic. This one, Trump has been talking about a crypto initiative for quite some time. This is not what I expected. And I'm not sure how I feel about this. So it's their personal cryptocurrency initiative, not something that they would propose as president. But they're talking about, broader push to position the U.S. as the global leader in cryptocurrency, not with the government doing anything. And that's maybe a good thing that he's not proposing that the government get involved. But this is a World Liberty Financial. It's a cryptocurrency project backed by Donald Trump, his sons, and his backers. Would feature a new cryptocurrency token called WLFI. It would reward the people, the founding team and users, but 60% would be made, or 63% supposedly would be made available to public. So this is a business venture by Donald Trump and his family and his backers. So again, when they offered 70% of the tokens to the public, people said, hey, this could be a potential scam. Again, day-to-day operations will be managed obviously by someone else. I think it's interesting. Trump has plenty of ideas, some of them great, some of them make you shake your head and go, what? For me, this is one that makes me shake my head and go, not sure how I feel about this. Whether or not we should be embracing cryptocurrency or not, I think is yet to be seen. I do think we need to do something about the dollar and supporting the dollar, though, with all the craziness going on. Moving on to the next topic. This is another one that makes people go, what? This is from NBC News, and there are plenty of articles saying that Trump said this, going to get SALT back. Now, this is very ironic because that was one of his signature proposals in his initial tax. So what SALT did, it was a state and local tax deduction, and they capped it at $10,000, which really hurts. Who does it really hurt? It hurts the richest that are paying more than $10,000 a year in taxes, the state and local taxes. So it hurt the richest in high tax states like California, Nevada, or California, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, blue states where they have very high taxes. And the argument is it doesn't make sense for people to pay fewer federal taxes because they happen to live in blue states that have chosen to have much higher tax rates. So who does this help? It helps wealthier people in blue states. Now, this is something the Democrats have wanted. Maybe this is an olive branch. I don't know. Chuck Schumer has sworn that he will fight the extension of the cap on SALT tax, and he would make sure that it would not continue. Here it goes. I've always been for the elimination of the cap on SALT. I think it was a nasty piece of legislation supported by Donald Trump aimed at blue states. And he said if he's still majority leader next year, he will make sure that the SALT cap expires at the end of 2025. So maybe this is an olive branch. Who knows? A lot of Republicans are going, what? They pushed hard for this. They got it passed. And again, why are we rewarding blue states for having high taxes at the cost of everybody else? So there's arguments for or against it. So people are still digesting as Trump comes up with more ideas, but he could definitely use some more meat on his ideas. So last article here, wanted to find something to talk about Trump's policies, wanted to find something about Harris. I saw one article and I said, okay, we have something here for Harris. And she was talking about a group, it has it in here. So she was in an interview yesterday with the National Association of Black Journalists. And the one piece nugget of policy we got, she was talking about child care and elder care, and she said her plan was that families shouldn't pay more than 7% of their income on such costs. And that was it. That was the only substantive thing that she said with any facts, any percentages, any numbers. And this is CNN calling her out. So this is not Fox News. This is not a liberal. This is a liberal site, CNN, saying we want more details. Voters want more details. What are you actually running on? So I'm trying to give more details and cover what Kamala Harris is proposing, but it's part of her campaign strategy to not give specifics. So they're running on joy, they're running on good feelings. But I would love to have more specifics from both people. From President Trump, who's proposing new things, which is catching his own party, by surprise. But also Kamala Harris, who just isn't offering specifics at all. So again, they asked her about the Israel-Hamas war, another example of, she's saying a lot and not anything at all. I absolutely believe that this war has to end, which would be lovely, and it has to end as soon as possible, she said. And the way that it will be achieved is by getting a hostage deal, which Hamas has rejected time and time again. We're not even sure if the hostages are still alive. And a ceasefire deal done, which only benefits Hamas. So we are working around the clock to achieve that end. Far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. What about the innocent Israelis that were captured, slaughtered? Again, it's just interesting that the White House now seems to be taking a breather because they were trying to negotiate a deal, and Israel went and freed an Arab Israeli, and then Hamas went and killed, shot and killed other hostages before they could get rescued. So looks like right now Hamas is in the kill mode to make sure that they can't get rescued. So again, hard to negotiate, hard to find common ground with someone that's killing hostages. So again, it's just interesting to see how this is going to pan out. But again, I'm going to move forward to our topic for the day. And again, part of this article, the author of this article is opining for missing the days when they were decided by chunky policy debates or speeches, if it really was a thing. But especially today, it's by social media, by sound bites, by feelings, and a lack of detail, unfortunately, on both sides, but particularly lacking for Kamala Harris. When I get more details, I'll share it gladly. So we're going to switch gears to our topic of the day. I want to spend more time on that and try to spend more time on that as we go along. So yesterday we talked about taxpayer advocate. How can they help? What kind of issues they help with? So when you have something that's sat around for years, hopefully not even years, but when you're not getting, collections can help you, you're not getting a response from an audit or audit reconsideration, or you have something that's happening that's unfair or unjust, it just doesn't follow normal protocol or shouldn't. Taxpayer advocate can be amazing help. What they're not good at is when the IRS comes after you and you need immediate help. They're really bad at that. And they're not designed to help with that. So there are two different methods to get immediate help when the IRS comes after you. And there are plenty of people out there that get surprised that their mail was going somewhere else. They didn't know what was going on. And then all of a sudden, the bank accounts would clear out. All of a sudden, their employer lets them know, hey, your wages are garnished. The IRS finally moves on collections, and then it's a surprise. It's a shock. What do you do in that moment? So there's a couple things you do. And I'm going to try to break this down in practical matters. What's the first thing you should do? first thing you should do is call the IRS. If you have access to your tax account on irs.gov, you can get in there and you need two things to be able to resolve your case. And it doesn't matter if you get an appeal or not. You need to be filing compliant and payment compliant. So you might be able to get short-term help. So with the bank levy, you might be able to get them to release part of the funds in the moment. Again, and you have to have a real sense of urgency about this. I don't know what's going on with my camera. It's getting lighter than darker. So you have that sense. So with the bank levy, the sense of urgency isn't, hey, I need my money back. You have to have a reason. So if you have $50,000 just sitting in your bank account, the IRS found that little goose egg, or found that golden egg and said, hey, look what we found. And you don't need that money. It's just sitting there in your account. First of all, I wouldn't do that. You should have it invested in, if anything, to keep up with inflation. But if you need that money for medical bills, if you are planning a surgery, if you have a need, something that needs to happen, the more urgent, the better, especially if you need so much for let's say you have money in the bank to pay payroll for your company, for monthly bills. If you are behind on any bills, mortgage or rent or utility bills, those are great things to argue that, look, I need that money, I need it now, or I'm going to miss a payment on my car. And in general, it's supposed to be past due bills. It's supposed to be very urgent, especially for bank levies, because the IRS sees it as a one-time thing. But typically, you can go in there, and if you negotiate it correctly, you can get a good chunk of that money back, depending on your case history. If they've given you multiple warnings and they've hit your bank accounts multiple times, and you still don't have your act together, that's less and less likely that they're going to release those funds. So, real case, we had someone came to us well over a year ago, and this was a state that hit him for over $20,000, and they were in a tizzy, they were in a panic. Oh my goodness, I need your help! I need your help. We went and we got almost all of it released, and then she stopped communicating with us. And by stopping to communicate with us, we couldn't resolve the case. It was a problem. And we couldn't resolve it. We got the immediate help. A year later, her bank account got hit with over $30,000 in it. Now she's communicating with us again. We're like, well, now it's a lot less likely that they're telling us, no, we're not going to give it to you. So we're going to continue the conversation right after this next break, and how to immediately get some relief. Welcome back, everybody. So just to finish up the story I was just sharing, if you have a bank levy and you need immediate help, if it happens once, fine, deal with it. They're most likely to give you a break. The more egregious it is, the more money you have just sitting in your bank account, the harder it is to get most of that money released. But I've been very surprised at times that I've been able to get a lot more money released that I should have. Again, part of it is that it's a surprise, it's a shock. You can say, look, I didn't know about this. How could I deal with this? Now, if you get an immediate release from a bank levy, that is just the start. If you ignore them, blow them off. In this other case, it took it a year for the IRS to catch up again, or for the state to catch up. They're moving much quicker now. They're issuing letters and they're going after people in a much more aggressive way now. So don't bank on it being a while. It could be, okay, you don't respond, you don't get us the documents 3-4 months down the road, or even less if they were already tired with you and they've already been dealing with you. They could turn around and hit you in just a month or two. So you have to get your case straight. And the number one thing that they're looking for, like I mentioned, was filing compliance, payment compliance. So you have to have all your required returns filed. And more the IRS is demanding, okay, if you didn't file, you have to have an explanation as to why. And we're doing this right now with the state of California. Secondly, you have to be current on your current year taxes, so that when it talks about payment compliance, that's what they're talking about. You have to be making payments. Now, if we're in September. If someone gets a bank levy now, and it's late in there, September, October, November, you're not going to be able to catch up for the year. But the key is to start. Start doing something. If they show that you're making an effort, even if you're going to end up owing for the year, they will give you some leeway. Again, it becomes harder and harder to do that later on during the year. But as long as you start making those payments and they say, okay, now they're getting on track, we will still have to include your 24 taxes in whatever resolution we set up. But for 25, you have to make sure for the next coming year, you have to make sure you're not going to owe anymore. So you have to set up a plan. If you were already going to owe for the current year, you have to start addressing the problem by starting to make payments and then make a plan to make sure this does not continue. Now, for wage garnishments, they're going to be tighter because this is an ongoing thing. They don't get nearly as much for a wage garnishment as they do for a bank levy, typically. And to release it, a lot of times they're going to demand get those tax returns in. Start showing that you're having sufficient withholdings taken out of your paycheck if you're W-2, or estimate tax payments if you are self-employed. And it's harder to do that when you're already getting garnished and levied. So sometimes, and I've had to do this, I've had them reduce the levy just so they can start making estimated tax payments. Or they can increase their withholdings to make sure. But that's harder to do when you already have a garnishment in place. Once you meet those two requirements, and again, this can be done fairly quickly. If you're already on top of filing your taxes and then just get surprised by something, we can get in there and usually release a wage garnishment or bank levy fairly quickly, depending on the facts of your case. If it's going to take longer, or if the person you're dealing with on the other side is not working with you, this is where you can consider some appeals options. And you can file an appeal right away. It's just usually not effective. There are people that delay their cases and make it harder. So I'm going to talk about the two types of appeals you can file in collections when you have bank levies, wage garnishments. First is a CDP hearing, collection due process. The second one is a CAP appeal. So a CDP, requesting a collection due process hearing. Again, if we go to irs.gov, it's pretty easy to find. I'm going to go ahead and share their website as we go through this. All you have to do is look up collection due process. And it comes right up. The CDP, facts, how do you do it? And this is, if you received a CP 504, you get a notice of intent to levy or a final notice of levy. You can ask for a reconsideration, etc. But it goes through what to do if you don't think you owe, if you don't think you have an issue here. But here's the form for a CDP hearing, collection due process hearing. Now, what kind of form? What kind of hearing is this? This puts an immediate stop to collections. But what it doesn't do is resolve your case. What you're alleging here is that the IRS did not check the boxes when they came after you. So when they came after you and hit you with the bank levy or wage garnishment, you're alleging that they didn't do it correctly. They didn't give you due process. So this is a collections due process issue. And these go with federal due process rights. You didn't have the notice, you didn't know what was going on, and so you just fill out the type of tax form, tax periods. Reasons you're requesting: I am not liable, innocent spouse relief, you're claiming innocent spouse, they were discharged in bankruptcy, so you're saying the IRS should not be coming after you. You made payments that were not applied, you're trying to get the notice of federal tax lien withdrawn, you can't pay due to financial hardship. Your unable pay in full would like some kind of collection alternative. So they can work out some kind of collection alternative, but you need to have something in place. Now, the CDP hearing, they can try to work something out with you, but that's not typically what they do. Typically what they do, they review the case and say, okay, did the IRS mess up? That's their number one question here. And I'm going to post this onto the links for it. So if you have questions about the hearing, collection due process hearing, you just put that in there and it comes up with the right form. What was that? 12153. I'm not so you have to understand so when they submit that, that's the first thing they're going to look at is, has the IRS done their due diligence? Have they sent you the proper letters? Have they gone through their steps as they are required? Doesn't mean you had to have notice. It just means the IRS did what they were supposed to on their end. Number two, they'll see, okay, can we take care of the case? Can we just wrap this up for this individual and get this taken care of? They do not replace collections. Typically, if collections has done what they want, they'll say, okay, do you have an easy resolution you can give to us? If you do, if it's just an installment agreement, if it's obvious and clear and you already have all the documents, you already have everything prepared, they might just say, okay, well, let's do that. That doesn't happen that often. Usually they look at it, they review it, within 2 to 3 months, your case gets kicked back to collections. When it gets kicked back to collections or back to a revenue officer, because you can use this for revenue officers, they're typically not happy. They see this as a game. They see this as especially if you didn't have a real reason to file the CDB thing, they get frustrated that you didn't work with them. And this is more typical of revenue officers, because when you call the IRS, there's not one person handling your case. They'll pull up your case, see the history, and go, oh, they filed a CDP request and it came back to us. Why aren't you dealing with us? Why aren't you working with us? There are times to file a CDP request, absolutely, but I think it's an abused process. There are plenty of tax professionals out there that file them all the time, just to buy time instead of making sure you're actually moving a case forward. So when I file a CDP request, I tell the taxpayers, hey, now's the time to use this time wisely. And there's other ways to buy time with the IRS. There's other way, with the IRS and states, to buy time to get something addressed rather than let's just kick the can down the road. Most people, when they get an extra 2 or 3 months time, do not take advantage of that time. They don't use the time wisely. So when the collections comes back, it's even nastier. And you really didn't do yourself any favors. I stepped into a case once where I reached out, I took over another attorney's case, and she had done this. She had kicked the can down the road with the CDP request. I stepped into the case. I reached out to the revenue officer. I called. I tried to fax things to him to get him to respond. Didn't respond. And then he issued levies. So again, I had done my part, and he felt like the previous attorney was just messing around with him. So he was very mad and frustrated. I said, hold the phone. I'm a new person. I don't play that game. I'm going to deal with you directly, and I've been communicating with you directly, and you have not responded. So again, I went above his head to his manager. I went to the regional manager. I raised holy hell in that case because he was not being professional with me looking to resolve the case. He had taken it personally, and he said some inappropriate things directly to me, which I recorded. And again, that's exactly what I raised to his manager and held him accountable. But that mess was created by someone not being serious with the case, not dealing with it head on and playing games with the IRS. It's not helpful. It's destructive. And I don't recommend filing a CDB request unless you're absolutely using that time to move your case forward, getting your financial information together so you have a resolution in mind, you know what you're going to do. And if you don't resolve it with the CDP request, you can immediately resolve it afterwards. So the other kind of, and we're running a little short on time here, I want to share that IRS website one more time. So this time we're going to put cap appeal. So here we go. This is a different kind of appeal. Actually, that's cap eligibility. So this is a different kind of appeal where you are filing a protest. So again, where it talks about collection appeal rights. And this, again, it's a different form, 12203, request for appeals review. This is for an immediate review of the case. So if you're not getting your case taken care of, you're not being heard, you don't feel like the person you're trying to work with isn't working with you, and then they issue a collections, but you've done what you've done, and we have had cases where we cement all the documents, we're waiting on the revenue officer, or we're waiting on someone to handle the case, and instead of reviewing that when the ball's in their court, we're waiting on them, and then they issue a levy. A cap appeal is ideal in that situation. So they issued a levy and you don't agree with it, say, hey, I've been doing everything right. It's a quick 2 to 3 day review, or it should be, a week at most. They'll look at it, they'll review it, determine if the IRS is taking appropriate action, and then if you have a resolution ready to go, they can help put that resolution in. So it's a way to go over somebody's head if they're not being professional in dealing with the case as they should. So a cap appeal can be very helpful when you're in a tough situation, and we have used it before. We don't use it often because, again, it doesn't make people happy, especially if they still have to wrap up the case. If you're dealing with a revenue officer, trust me, you don't want to step on their toes too much. There are times, absolutely step on toes, but try to be as professional as possible as you go through this and keep feelings out of it, because trust me, they can get very upset about cases when they know they shouldn't. They can get very emotionally involved in cases, especially if they've been working a long time. But if you see that you're trying to work with them, you're trying to get a case done, they'll work with you. And again, that's the whole goal, is to resolve your case for you. So if you have questions about either kind of appeals, CDP or cap appeals, they are very useful tools when used appropriately. But be careful about just going out and doing CDP requests or cap appeal requests, because if you do it inappropriately, you're not ready for resolution. You don't have your stuff together. The best thing you can do is put together your financial information. Do it quickly. Don't delay. Get your tax returns done quickly. Now is one of the worst times to try to get tax returns done quickly because everybody's busy ahead of the October 15th deadline. But if you are looking for a CPA to get tax returns done quickly, we work with plenty that can turn things around quickly. Give us a call, 520-485-7371, or you can reach out to us through guardiantaxlaw.com or watch any of the videos right on our website. There's a YouTube link where all of these shows are being posted for your review later on. So again, real takeaway from here, be prepared. Get ahead of the game. If you have been slacking and you haven't done your tax returns for many years, the IRS is being more aggressive than ever. And one of the big things we're trying to emphasize to the clients, and my eyes got big, this is such an issue right now. Getting your current year taxes done. So many people are struggling just to get their 2023 taxes done. They're waiting to the last minute. And sometimes they have to with businesses. But I encourage you, it's going to save you time, stress, and money to figure out your taxes, to stay up on top of them, get your bookkeeping done throughout the year, so that way next year you can handle your taxes a lot better, and you can make the whole process a lot easier for you and for your business if you have one. So again, if you have any questions, reach out to us. Hope this was informative, and we will see everybody tomorrow. So have a great day.